I'm the CEO of RJ Reliance. In this series, I'm talking with business owners, operators, HCM leaders, employees, partners, and industry experts about how work is changing. We'll look at people, systems, payroll, HR, time, integrations, operations, and yes, AI, but always from a practical business perspective. The goal is simple: understand what companies should be thinking about as they modernize how work gets done. Today, I'm talking with a technology expert who works with organizations around HCM technology, payroll, time, HR systems, integrations, and workforce operations. We'll explore what companies need to understand technically and strategically as they modernize. On the call today with me is Jake Kirkman. So Jake, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Hi, yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Jake. I'm an application developer here at RJ Reliance. Essentially, what I'm doing is usually I'm syncing data between different platforms just to keep everything up to date and modernize as well. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
So in looking at the clients that you're servicing, given that you do a lot of development work, a lot of work in the integration space, so what kind of technical decisions, in your opinion, matter to most of them, especially as they look to modernize their HCM systems?
I would say for modernization, we really need to look at what software are we trying to modernize? That can take up a lot of time if we're trying to convert that, because a lot of these old systems are using different conventions, different styles of how they export and import data. So we really need to make sure that we're considering how much time that's going to take, right? The older something is, the longer it's going to take. It's something that we can do, but it's not maybe as easy as someone might think.
Yeah, I'm sure. The other question, because I know a lot of the work you do is tied to removing manual processes, working to automate. So thinking about the projects that you've worked on over the course of the last year, like what are, at a high level, some of the main points of the projects that you're working on? Like what are clients automating in your experience and what you're working on?
A lot of time it's just personal data. Companies collect a lot more data now than they used to. So it's a lot of like demographic data, that kind of thing. And so we really need to, when we're automating that, we really need to consider how can we do that the most efficiently? Should we be using APIs or SFTP? I mean, it depends, right? Like you don't want to be hitting APIs multiple times because that gets really slow. So yeah, you just see a lot of demographic data essentially, and there's a lot more of it now than there used to be.
Yeah, because the ease and accessibility to get to that information has continued to grow and compound, and the use of that data to drive actionable insights for the business leaders obviously is imperative. Not to mention, then on top of all that, with payroll, you have compliance concerns and things. So and again, looking at the projects that you're working on, where do modernization efforts usually become harder than expected? So just thinking about the projects, where have the projects gone a little bit off course in your experience as you approach new projects?
Like I was saying before, it usually depends on the platform you're trying to use, right? So I was working with a client who was using a platform called QuickBooks, which required us to create a local atom. It's just in our Boomi environment, and that took a lot more time than expected, right? I think that project got delayed by a month or so, just because that setup was much harder than expected. I think you just need to really consider the compatibility with the middleware you're using. Like we're using Boomi, for example. How compatible is Boomi with this, in this example, QuickBooks, right? If it's pretty compatible, modernizing may not be pretty hard or very hard, but if it's not, it could take a bit more work.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that people don't realize is that even with all of the advances and technical advances and the thought that most people can go to the web and pull up their information, that there still exists these tools like QuickBook Desktop as an example, where clients are heavily reliant on those solutions, but you still need a way or means to be able to connect to those solutions to drive efficiency across their business. So for the audience here on the call today, one of the big things that they're really interested in is artificial intelligence. So when you think about how the conversation around artificial intelligence, what foundations need to be in place before AI becomes useful instead of noisy, in your opinion?
Yeah, this is actually something I feel pretty strongly about. So I think the biggest thing is people just need to be educated in how it works. It's no different than Google, right? When you search something in Google, you don't type out a whole sentence. You need to know how to query it correctly to get the results you're looking for. Now,
Yep.
AI works not exactly like that, but in order to get what you're looking for and to get correct answers, you need to be you need to know how to use that correctly. And I think we don't really have that as much as we did 20 years ago when people were learning search engines, how to use the internet, all that stuff. And I think in order to avoid the mistakes that AI can make, it'll be less likely to give you the answer you want and make less mistakes if you are asking it questions in the way you should be asking them, right? So basically I just think more education around how to properly use it, essentially.
Yeah, I would agree that kind of the domain experience that you have helps shape the answers that you ultimately get back, right? So the more information or knowledge you have about what you're trying to achieve will net you out better, more responsive answers than just generic questions. What does when a company is considering artificial intelligence, what are some of the considerations you think they should be making, especially when it comes to HCM and payroll?
I think we should consider sensitive information. Is it going to be handling that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the first thing you need to look into because a lot of HR work now is done with AI and doing repetitive tasks. So that's the first thing I would definitely say. As for, I guess I would also say maybe people, this kind of goes back to the education thing, I think, but I think maybe oftentimes I've seen clients not assume that it can be incorrect when it's reviewing data. And I think that it should always be validated, right? When I'm developing, if I'm using it, I'm always validating, right? Because I'm always debugging, I'm talking to it and it's helping me. It's like if you're the only person working on a project, it's like a tool that can help you and you can talk to it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the rubber duck analogy, I guess you would call it, where talking to something helps you figure it out. That's what AI is really good for
Yeah.
in development. And I think that you need to have something, it needs to be more like that when you're working within an HR if you're actively using it, because then you won't be making mistakes. I think it should be used for small tasks to be less likely to make mistakes. And I think you should be interacting it with it in that way rather than just not validating it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
validation is key.
Validation is definitely key when it comes to AI, at least as it exists right now, even though, again, there's a lot of change happening. So as I move into kind of closing the last couple of questions, tell me a little bit about what are you watching closely on when it comes to artificial intelligence? What are you looking at and following so that you stay up to date on those tools?
Yes, what I've been looking at is codecs recently a lot. I think that's probably going to be a big part of the future, at least when it comes to development, but also other things when it comes to AI. If you're not familiar with codecs, it basically can control your mouse and you can have it give it permission to do things in your computer. I think is really great because it's not going to delete System 32 or something on a Windows computer because you need to give it permission to do certain things. But once you do, it remembers, so it can code for you. And in Boomi, that's like a visual editor, right? So if you're anyone who's watching isn't familiar with it, it can point and click for you. It can drag the shapes together. It's not quite there yet to where you wouldn't need a developer to assist with that. It struggles right now, but the fact that it can work with Boomi means that I'm sure that's just on the web, right? And it can also just code for you. I even was trying to play a game with it once for fun, just to say, hey, can I play a game? And it actually worked pretty decently. So I think,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty cool, right? So I think that tool is honestly the future of AI. We can see things like that where you can be working on one thing and it's doing another. So something that maybe you're like, I don't really trust an AI to do this. This is something that I think whatever field you're in, my expertise needs to be involved here. You can be doing that while the AI does some menial task or some repetitive task over here, right? And you're doing it at the same time, and it can do it with anything, and it's adaptive, and you can literally watch it work. So that I think that's what I've been looking at the most, and I think that could be the future of AI for sure.
Wow, that's great. Well, great insight. So, Jake, thanks so much. Really looking forward to having more conversations with you around this topic. The goal of these conversations is to really help business leaders understand what people close to the work are seeing in terms of how to apply AI, what trends are happening in real systems, on real projects, and real operations. So, Thanks so much for your time, and looking forward to having more conversations in the future.
Yep. Thanks so much, Rob.
All right. Thank you.